Okay, so the last class we stopped at using the count method. And we said you can use this count method if your goal is to count the number of occurrence of a particular letter or a particular word. For a particular word, in this case, for instance, you want to count the word D, THE, you want to count how many times this word occurs. Please, I would love us to be muted so that there won't be any background noise. So you want to count this in this string, the mind is the center of excellence. So in this case, there's something wrong here. We have a capital letter T, but in our string, we do not have that. So if you do this, you may return 0. So if you run this, you can see it returns 0. So in that case, what do we need to do? Anybody? What do we need to do?
We can call on a method on the word D, that is to convert it to lowercase.
Exactly. So we have, fortunately for us, we have a method called lower. So because it's a string and we've put it inside a string, if you press tab, it can show you the method to do. So we can call on the lower method. So if you do this now, it returns 2. It says that, oh, we have 2 article D in this word. So that's one thing you can do. That's right. Thank you. So so that's how to use the word count, to use the method count. Let's look at another one called find. So let's look at what find will return us. So we return to us. You can actually press Shift Tab to see the documentation. So it said it returns the lowest index in that string where the substring sub is found. The string in this case is the whole sentence we have here. The mind is the center of excellence. The substring is what you want to find. But find will give you the index of the first occurrence of that word. In this case, so if I run this now, that find mind is going to give us the index, the position where that word occurs. And it's saying the word mind, please be muted. I would like everyone to be muted, except you have a question or you want to answer a question. So it's telling us that find occurs in index 4, in position 4. Remember, Python start counting from 0. So the T is 0, H is 1, E is 2, and the space is 3. And then the mind, we start with letter M, starts from 4. So, but what happens? Suppose you want to find D. If I do that, that only gives me the index of the first occurrence of this word. But we have 2 of them. How do we find the index of the second one? Suppose I'm interested in the second occurrence of D. How do we go about that? Any idea? Anybody who want to give it a try? Vera, what do you think?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Dimeji, what do you think?
I'm not sure yet, but I think maybe we can just say something like add +1.
Say that again.
Maybe we can just like add +1, something like that, but I'm not sure.
Now, D is a string, and 1 is another data type, which is integer. So Python will react harshly to that. Okay, Peter, you want to try?
I don't know if there's a method like maybe .index if it's possible.
Okay. All right, let's see. Instead of find, let's see if there is something that can point to the right. Like, oh, instead of starting from the left, let's see if you have anything on right. Let's see R. So fortunately, we have what we call R find. Let's see what this R find is going to do. Let's check the documentation. It says returns the highest index in X where substring X is found. Remember, find returns the lowest index. R find will return the highest because it's from the right. So if we do that now, that tells me the second THE is at index 12. So that means this T is at index 12. So you can use the R find, meaning find it from the right. Find the position of this word from the right, okay? So, but the limitation of this is if I have more than 2, and the major I'll answer, I will call you now. So suppose we have more than 2, and then I'm interested not in the far end, the one at the middle. This may be, you may devise another means. Okay, the major, your question.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to ask, because your question before was the second, not from the right. So I wanted to ask if we have more than 1, then.
Exactly. So in that case now, we may move to another thing we have not gotten to call for loop, to iterate through the string and then tell it, maybe if that word starts with, maybe give it a position and tell it if it starts with T or THE, then it should give us the index of that. So it's going to be more complex than this, but we may not be able to use the built-in function. But that's by the way, so you will develop that when we start looking, when we get more understanding of this stuff. So you may have to develop that, okay? All right, so I've stylishly talked about how to convert to lowercase and uppercase, but mainly lowercase. So suppose we have the string name equals to hello Jarvis, and we want to return the lowercase. This may not make sense to you now, but as we begin to work with, especially if you want to work with text data, I don't know if I will introduce you guys to it, because as a data scientist or someone with a data science enthusiast, the world now is growing in terms of text data. You buy something, you want to give feedback in text. So there may be a need to add to your skill how to handle text data. So adding that will make you more competitive. The aspect that deals with that, I know, is what we call natural language processing, but that's more advanced. But text analysis is also good. Okay, so you may want to do a project on sentiment analysis, like how to build a model to determine the sentiment of people, whether people are happy with a particular product from an organization or they are not. You will be dealing with text data. So one of the rules is that when you're working with text data, because of the different variants of each word, there may be need for us to convert all the words that occur in that first to lowercase, so that our Python can recognize that, okay, all these words means the same thing. Because if a word occurs in lowercase and THE all in lowercase and another one T start with capital letter, it's going to see them as being different, okay? But you will understand this as we begin to put all the pieces together. But for now, let's just look at them in separate pieces. So how do we convert this to uppercase? We can call the string, which is name in this case, put dot and press tab. There's something called a method called upper. Remember, it's a method. It must end with a parenthesis. So if you do that, it converts that to uppercase. And the same thing, we've already used lower. We want to convert this particular one to lowercase. So we do dot lower, and then you run that, it's going to convert all of that to lowercase, okay? Please, if you have questions, always free to raise your hands or ask me, okay? So capitalize. Capitalize means, remember, if you want to start a sentence in English language, you should start with the first letter has to be capitalized, things like that. So the game is supposed to start with capital letter T. Suppose you have a text that do not have the first letter to start with a capital letter, and you want to make sure it's capitalized. Just call your string dot press tab. There's something, the first method here is capitalized, and that will do that for us. So You can see it turns the first letter to T, to capital letter, to uppercase. So that makes it capitalized. And so that is what I would say here. Any question before we look at split? Any question? Are we good? Am I too fast? Are we good?
We're good, sir.
All right. So there is another type called split, like you want to split string. In natural language processing, we call each string that is being split in each word that occurs in a string, we call them a token. A token just means word, although token can include punctuation. But when we say split, it means divide a sentence into individual words. Suppose we have a string called name that carries genesis of a new realm of possibility. Each word here is a token, but we want to make them stand alone. For instance, I say, oh, give me, is there a way for you to extract the word realm from this string? The whole word realm as a word, not the position. Is there a way? Anybody? How do you, I said, find the word rem here, not just find the index, print it out to stand alone, rem. What can you do? How can you solve that? Anybody?
We can do that using slicing.
Okay, go ahead.
From the
Tell me how to
position.
do that. Oh, so you will have to count, right?
Yes, sir.
Suppose I give you a whole page and that word is at the middle of the page. You don't even know where the word is, but you know the word occurs somewhere. How do you do that?
Yes, so we can use the split. So it returns a list.
Exactly. So if you want to do that, suppose you have name, you press stop and do this, press tab. We have a function called split. If I run that, look at what split gives me. Then I might now be able to say, okay, now I already have a list where each word there has been segmented. We now have each word occurring each word here is what we call token. Then I can say, because this is a small list, or this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I put 4 here, this will give me the word rem. But the idea of using split, so what split does is that it actually divides it breaks it down using the space. Okay, so when it looks for space, so anywhere it sees space, it knows that's the end of the word, so it breaks it. That's what it does. So that's why after starting from here and getting to Genesis, the last S, it saw space, then it divides it. That should mean the end of that word. Like that, that's how it does for every other one. Okay, I'm going to rush through some of these other ones because you have access to this method. I've shown you where to get this method and you can play around them. So I may rush through this so that we can get to more important stuff. But if at all you don't understand them, please feel free to ask. Okay? So we have a string here called Dr. Ambedkar, but it has a new line character. New line character is a \n, meaning breaks it to a new line, but we don't want it. We want to remove it. There is a function called strip to strip that thing from it. Okay, so it also gives us the flexibility of specifying the position where to remove it. Should I remove it from the right or the left or things like that? Now, suppose you have a word that there is a space here. Okay, I'll attend to you, Peters. And then, so I have two things. I have a space at the beginning of the word. I have a new line character here. And so it gives us a flexibility of, should I remove the space and leave this one at the right? Or should I remove the new line character while still retaining the space? Or should I remove both the space and the new line character? Peters, your question. Your question, please.
I wanted to ask about the split.
Okay.
I wanted to ask if there were white spaces like before that word Genesis,
Okay. Like
like if
this.
it was a paragraph, how would it handle it?
Like this, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No, before the Genesis. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I've put space now. So let's see. Does it change?
No, sir.
So that's because no word occurs before the Genesis except space. There's no word. So it's not going to count it. It's not going to see it. It only begins, like it's more effective when it sees a word and then space, no matter how big the space occurs. So it knows there's no word here. So it's not going to count. It's still going to count from the beginning of Genesis to where it meets the next space. Okay?
Okay.
So the strip method here. So I gave two different things here. I talked about strip method giving us the flexibility of whether to remove the space here or the new line or to remove both at the same time. Suppose we are only interested in the new line, which is from the right. This string can help us with, like, if you do this, we have the string, the right strip, just like we have for the find method. We have right strip, right strip. So if we do that, see, it's going to remove the new line, but still retains the space at the beginning. And if I do left strip, meaning remove the space at the beginning, but retain this new line. I want you to all be muted, please, so that there is no background noise. Please be muted. No, except when you have a question. Please be muted. Okay, so if you do that, you can see it now remove the space at the beginning, but keep the new line. However, if you are interested in removing both at the same time, you can use just the strip method. Remember, you don't need to memorize any of these. You can see this remove both. You don't need to. Just put dot and press tab, and that will list the method for you. But as you work on it over and over and over again, you just get to understand them. So I've shown you how to remove anything you don't want, either at the beginning or at the end or both at the same time. Okay? Yeah. So I already explained the split method here. And the idea here is instead of splitting by white space, you can also specify what you want to split with. Like in this case now, I have a date. I'm interested in the 2016. If I just use the split method by default, it's still not going to work. It's still not going to give me what I want. It actually does not split because the default way of splitting is white space, but it cannot see any space here. So, but it gives you the flexibility of specifying the separator argument that you want to use. In this case, it's hyphen, not space. So if I specify hyphen, it's going to now split it. So anywhere it sees that I have hyphen in the string, it's now going to split it. So you have to be aware of the delimiter, the separator in the string you want to split. By default, the split will use a space. But if the delimiter or the separator in your string is a semicolon, it's not going to work except you specify the semicolon inside the split method. I don't know if that makes sense to you. Okay? All right. Any question on that before we end strings? This will be the last thing to end string, the join, how to join two strings in a list together. Any question before I do that? Any question, please?
Okay. Sir.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
If you just want to strip maybe just twice, or like for instance that date.
Okay.
Like you can have it. So if you just want to strip just once or twice, is it possible?
What do you mean by if I want to strip once or twice? I don't think I get it.
Sorry, to split.
Split.
Just once, like maybe you just needed that 27.
So what I will advise you to do is first split it, and then you can get the 27 is at position 1, like position 0 in pandas in Python. Then just call on the index, and then you get 27. Do you get? So split, and then you can use the indexing method with looker to get out the actual something you are interested in. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other question? Okay. How do we now? We have a list here. We've not looked at list, but focus on the strings inside the list. Now, so I'm dealing with a list of strings, but I know that this Mohit and Raj is actually a name of a single person. So I want to join them together. I want to combine them, but they're in a list, not exactly string. How do I combine them? Any idea?
Yes, we use the join keyword. So
All right.
just the same way we splitted, looking at whenever the method sees space, we can also call on a space within quotation mark, then dot join.
Oh, okay. The image is an advanced student. So yeah. So what he's saying is this, because if I call on name dot and press tab, I won't see any method called join, because Python recognizes that the name here, which this name variable is not a string, but a list. So it will only list all the methods particular to list. You can see now that we do not say anything called join, because join is a method for string, not a list. So Python is not giving us, so if I do J, no method called join, because name here is a list. So we have to find a way to make the name a string. So what it's trying to do is that let's define an empty quote which stands for string. Remember, a string is anything that is wrapped inside a quote. So let's define an empty quote which stands for a string, and then if we put dot and press tab, it will list all the method particular to string. You can see J now we now have join. If I now pass in the variable name, if you do that now, oh, sorry, I didn't spell that correctly. Now I have it as this, but I can even put space in between that, and then I have it as a single string. Do I get what you're trying to say, Dimeji?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you can see the ideology. The ideology is that name is a list. So if you just put name.join, it's not even going to see join. Join is not a method on list, it's a method on string. So we have to first define an empty string, and then put dot, and then you can now have access to the join method and pass in your list inside. Then you will have it there. Any question on that before we look at tuple? And is either we now go to the lab session to practice everything, or we move to list. Maybe as we move on, if you guys are permitted, if you guys are free, as we move on, we might extend this training to Saturday, Sunday, so that we can quickly cover a lot, but not now. I'll let you know very soon, as based on my my schedule. So, but let's see. Okay, so if there's no question, let's look at tuple. Your knowledge of indexing a string will help you with tuple, list, and dictionaries and all of that, because it's the same way. But what is a tuple? How is a tuple different from a string? A tuple is an immutable data structure, and you declare it with a parenthesis, and by parenthesis I mean a round bracket. Okay, but one thing you should keep at the back of mind that is immutable, and by immutable we mean that once you define a tuple, you cannot update it, except you convert it to a mutable data structure like list, except you do that. Otherwise, you cannot update it. This is an example of, to declare an empty tuple, I can call a variable called, let me call tup, and just this. This is an empty tuple because there's nothing inside of it. So the tuple here is an example of a tuple. Note that we have different data structure, different data type here. We have an integer, we have a float, we have a string, and we have a character. A character is just a single letter. Okay, so that means a tuple can consist of different data types. But remember, you cannot change it. How do you know? For instance, I want to update the first letter, the first element, 1, I want to change it to 5. So I specify the index of the first element, which is index 0. I put it to 5. It's going to give me error. It tells me tuple object does not support item assignment. So that's because once you define it, that is how it will be, except you convert it to a mutable data structure. And one example of a mutable data structure is a list. So I have to convert it to a list, and then you can now deal with it. But we'll look at that when we're dealing with lists. But just know that a tuple is an immutable data structure, and you can also define several data types inside of it. Any question before we look at how to index? Indexing, I won't spend more time at all because it's the same way as how to index a string. Any question? Are we good? Okay, so indexing, so we use this to revise how we how we indexed the string when we were dealing with that, because it's the same way. But now notice that this is a tuple. If you want to be sure, you can check the type of the tuple in this cell is Avengers. If you check the type, you can see it tells you this type is tuple. And you can see that you declared it with a parenthesis, a round bracket. Okay, so let's quickly revise our indexing method. How do I get the last element here?
-1 is the index.
Yeah,
-1.
Index -1. Okay, then that gives us the last. Oh, sorry, by default, tuple Jupyter Notes will give us, notebook will always give us the last index. So let's rerun it. You see, give us the last element here, awk. What about the first element? I don't want the Dimeji. How do you index the first element? How do you get 0? Yep. Okay, so that gives us Iron Man. Iron Man. How do you get the first 2? I want to get these first 2, Iron Man and Vision. Anybody?
That's
0,
0 colon.
0
colon 2.
0 colon 2
colon
or just
3.
colon 2. So colon 2 means start from the beginning. So this, remember, is not going to include the 2, which is 0, 1, 2. It's not going to include the 2, but it's going to do 0 to 1. So do that, that gives you Iron Man and Vision. What if I want from Vision to the end? Vision to the end. Anybody?
1 colon.
As 1 colon, then nothing.
So if I do, so you want, I do this. Okay, so this means, remember, 1 means position, the second one, because start from 0 and then to the end. That's right. How do we now reverse it?
Double
How do we
colon
reverse
-1.
Yeah.
-1 colon.
So you do double colon, then -1, meaning
minus.
go from the first to the last, but go starting from, like me, this double colon means we want to iterate through the tuple, but start from the last. Okay, that's what the -1 is doing. So if you do that, you start from awk and move to Iron Man. What if I want to move in index of 2? Let's say I have another one called cup. So how do I move in index? I want to move from the beginning to the end, but in step of 2.
Colon 2.
That's right.
That's
Just specify the
colon
step.
2.
The last thing is just the step, how you want to move. So, and that goes from Iron Man, it jumps to Thor, then it jumps to Cup. Then it knows that if I jump from man, I'm not going to jump to anything, so it just stop at Cup. So that is how. So we've talked about indexing and slicing tuple. It's the same thing as how you index a dictionary, how you index. Well, dictionary is special a little bit, but how you index a list, how you index a string. Okay. Unpacking, we dealt with that under string is the same thing. Unpacking mean I define a loop called 1, 2, 3, and I want to pack them into 3 variables so that A will be 1, B will be 2, C will be 3. You can just specify the variables separating with comma and then assign the tuple to it. As far as the number of variables is the same as the number of elements you want to assign to them, you get it. Similar concept for this and all of that. So just before we round up this session, let's look at how to find, we've looked at how to find the length of a string, the same thing here. If I want to know how many elements are in this tuple, just use the length function and supply the tuple. So that will give you the number of elements there. In this case, it's going to be 4 elements. So that's why you have 4. And the same thing, we have a built-in function for max, maximum, and minimum. And then you can call on the max function and specify the variable like 2. It tells me 510 is the max element, max number there. And then if I supply the mean, it can also mean like that. So, but how do I get the average of this? How do I get the supply? Suppose I'm interested in the average of the, how do I do that? Anybody? Any idea? Hello?
Yes, that's the mean.
Okay, the Dimeji said that's the mean.
Mean function.
He said name mean is not defined. So how do
we will import mass.
I don't want to import anything. I know you can, like import math, and then you can call on, so you can call on math.what.mean, right? But it's not seeing it. So we import math, so how do you get it from math?
We import
cannot actually the mean.
I want someone to talk, just one person at a time, please. Yes, who is talking?
Okay, we import math.
Import math,
Then with math.mean. Or we can say from math import mean. Then math.mean.
Look at the math dot, I press tab. Let's see if there is a function called mean. I don't have mean here.
So we import, we say from statistics, and then you
I have professors in this class.
And then you import mean from statistics, import mean. Then you call on mean ordinary.
Import. Let's even press tab and see. If you do from statistics import and press tab, it will show you all of what you have there. So you are able to use mean from there. Okay. So what if you don't know this? And for instance, now I don't know that there is a package called statistics. Suppose I don't know, and I know there's mean. How do you not do that? Is there a way you can do it without using a function?
You can actually just find it. You divide it by the length of the
I can't hear you, Idris. What did you say?
You can actually just find the sum and divide it by the length of the tuple.
That's right. That's right. Some mean is average, meaning add everything together and divide it by the number of elements. So how do you write that? Tell me the code and I will put it down for you. Let me be your writer. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I can't hear you.
It should be T2.sum. Into bracket, the function of sum. The sum function.
So T2 dot express tab. There's nothing called sum for tuple. See, I press tab and
that should sum into bracket 12 or sum into bracket 2.
Okay, sum in bracket T2. Then we divide it by what?
T2 dot length. No, length T2, length.
Len of T2, that's right. So that gives us the same thing, you can see. So just sum it and then you divide it. Later as we go on, I will show you, I will introduce you to a library called Numpy. That's for numerical Python. So anything like this, any mathematical stuff like this, you can use Numpy. And you don't have to remember, so that you won't have to know that, oh, statistics and all that. But this is good. At least this is another package you can use. But Numpy is much more popular and versatile than a lot of these. So, but we'll get to that as we move on. Okay. So, I mean, I will skip this. This is just adding two tuples together, like Avengers 1, Avengers 2. You can add them to concatenate their elements, and you can expand these by multiplying. So let me see if you can do this under a few minutes. So I'm going to quickly put you into a group, a Zoom group, to quickly work on this question. It's very simple anyway. So given two strings, which are the strings I put here, I want to see how you can like just create a new string, and the string should be like, suppose for the first one, I mean, I want an answer like, the answer should give me like the middle of the first one, and I place everything about the second string at the middle, and then I can continue with Rika, something like this. Do you understand the goal? So I want you to place the second string at the middle of the first string. And you are not going to do this manually. You may start manually, but see how you can make it more Pythonic, more in a programmatic way. So that's the idea. If you're able to solve this, obviously the same code should work for this. So that's the essence of this first question. So you will only do that for the first, then we can continue list. You can do this one later, but I want you to just do this first one. Does it make sense? So I'm going to put you quickly in